Hey everyone, my name is Chris Green, and I guarantee you've given me a few minutes today. I'm going to up your level when it comes to playing guitar, so let's get started. All right, the first thing we need to talk about is how you learn chords. Whenever you learn a new chord, it's very important that you go through each string individually to make sure it sounds nice and pure. Now, if you're going through and you hear something like this, that probably sounds like you've got your finger way too close to a fret. You probably need to squish your fingers around just a little bit so that they're in between the frets. And then also it probably sounds like if you hear something like this, it sounds like it's muted, you need to press down harder. And when you're beginning, if you feel like this is hurting you, like if your hand is shaking, it's really getting sore on your wrist, it probably tells me you haven't learned the chord as well as you think you have. So every time you're playing guitar, you're going to hear that pure sound when you can individually pluck the strings. It's not fun, but if you go through the hard work of making sure it's nice and pure, then every time you're playing that chord, no matter what string you're hitting, it's going to sound nice and good. And then you can intentionally mute strings in the future if you want to. All right, then we're going to talk about guitar picks. So my favorite picks to use are these prime tone picks. I believe they're from Dunlop. So they come in different thicknesses and sizes. Some of them have this textured grip on them. I do believe that they sound best for when I'm recording guitar at home. But when I'm playing like at church or if I'm playing live, I like to use these star picks. Don't get made fun of if you're just starting off and you're using these picks. It's totally fine. They've got this hole punched out in the middle that makes it really easy for you to grip your guitar pick. Now they do feel a little bit more like a credit card. They're a little bit more plasticky. It may not translate well like when it comes to recording in a studio space, but if you're playing live, it's good to have that grip so you don't end up dropping your pick all the time. Here's what they sound like. These are the yellow picks. Now, depending on the color, they'll have different thicknesses. I used the green picks for a while. I believe the greens are a little bit thicker than the yellows. The yellows are 0.73 millimeters. Anything that's like 1 millimeter or thicker, it's certainly going to be pretty quick. I believe this is 1.1 millimeters. This is the Dunlop. Now this could all be psychoacoustics, but I do believe when you use a thicker pick, something that's a little bit nicer than just plasticky feeling, these will have like a warmer tone. And when I mean warmer, I genuinely mean it has like a lower, low mids kind of feel to it. If you use something that's a little bit more tinny, it certainly will sound a little bit brighter. Next, we need to talk about playing dynamically. This is a really big deal. If you're in a band or you're in a group setting, if you've got drums and bass guitar, you're going to find yourself really trying to strum the guitar harder than it's supposed to sound. Be honest with yourself. An acoustic guitar is not an electric guitar. It's not running to an electric guitar amp. We don't want to hear distortion. We want to hear nice, pure acoustic guitars. Now, you can play dynamically. It often means that when people are starting off on guitar, their dynamics consist of they're either barely playing or they're just playing way too aggressively. Now that aggressiveness, if you're mentally putting yourself in the place of, well, I'm playing aggressively, I'm just really passionate when it comes to guitar, you're missing out on so many different layers of tone that you can get from the guitar. If I'm playing dynamically, I'm gonna go through the different levels that I believe would be suitable. Now, quietly, I could do some picking. I could play up on the guitar neck a little bit to get a mellower sound. I could start to increase my dynamics. And then the loudest I would play it's also going to have to do with the tempo of the song. If you're playing a fast song, you need to mentally put yourself in a state of, it's a faster song, I'm going to feel like playing harder, but just because it's fast doesn't mean it necessarily needs to be harder. What will happen is, as you're strumming your guitar, if you're playing too hard, it's going to really start to slip out of tune. You're going to be squeezing the neck harder than you're supposed to be sounding, and it doesn't generally sound good. It just sounds like somebody's got a really out of tune guitar. If I'm squeezing the life out of this thing, Now that may work out, but the more control you have, the better off you're going to be. You want to be able to let loose just like you would a gas pedal on a car. You want to be able to let loose on the gas a little bit when you need to, but then back off and play dynamically. So the next thing I want to talk about is how you can play the acoustic guitar kind of like a bass player, and that will translate into your finger picking. So with a bass player, you're typically going to be using your pointer finger and your middle finger. And what I want you to do is go to the low E string of the 3rd fret, and on the 3rd fret you're going to pluck with your pointer finger, and then you're going to move your pinky up to the 5th fret of the low E string, and then your middle finger is going to pluck. You can go back and forth with those all day long, and then practice your 8th notes. Do a full measure on the 3rd fret of the low E, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, change 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and so if I go to do my finger picking pattern, I then incorporate my thumb to hit the bass notes, and then you'll notice my pointer finger and middle finger are often hitting the G and the B strings. Watch how they're being used in this section here. All of that comes from practicing my bass playing with my pointer finger and middle playing. And as an acoustic guitar player, if you know how to play bass, you're also going to open yourself up to more avenues. All right, now when it comes to bar chords, we're often avoiding bar chords as much as possible, and that's because they hurt. I totally understand they hurt, but you're going to have to work through it if you want to develop those muscles. So with a bar chord, what we mean is you're taking your pointer finger and barring it like across the 3rd fret. So every single string is being fretted. Now, typically, this is where I would encourage you, if you're starting off with bar chords, it doesn't sound super great. You're gonna have to be motivated by external factors, but on the 3rd fret, I wanna make sure each string is getting plucked and has that pure sound to it. I've got my thumb just behind it, kind of like the counterweight on the back, counter force, if you will, and then it really doesn't matter. If you're doing the E shape, it's gonna be a whole lot easier to add these 3 fingers to the mix rather than solving for the pointer finger. So this is all about getting your pointer finger to be extremely strong so that no matter where you go on the neck, you're gonna be able to bar just fine. Now when it comes to bar chords, you can use the E shape, move it up a few frets up to the 5th and 4th frets. And then your A shape, which I'm often just going to be playing this like A2 chord down at the 2nd fret. So my last 2 fingers on the 2 middle strings, 2 strings are open below, 2 strings are open above. I'm on the 2nd fret with my last 2 fingers. That's my A2 chord. I'm going to shift that up to the 5th fret, and then I'm going to bar on the 3rd fret. Now, bar chords are also one of those things that you're going to have to keep in strength. So over time, if you're not doing bar chords for a while, you will start to lose that kind of muscle ability. So make sure every now and then you're incorporating bar chords as much as possible. Now, when it comes to strumming the guitar, believe it or not, the majority of you out there are going to be just fine sticking to down strumming. If you listen to stem tracks or multi-tracks from like praise and worship music, 9 times out of 10, it's a whole lot of down strumming, especially if you're doing a faster song. The only thing that's really coming across are the down strums. And when you're doing those down strums, you don't have to hit every single string. In fact, if you hit every single string, it just sounds like it's a little too much. It's also harder to keep with those dynamics that I mentioned earlier, so try to hit just a few strings at a time. You're really trying to emphasize the root of whatever chord you're playing, and then the other strings are just kind of like the background noise. On the opposite end, if you find a song that's mostly acoustic driven, or some of the older stuff, like if you're listening to music from the 60s and 70s, the strumming pattern will be a lot more important than it is within a modern dense mix. But even still, there are certain strumming patterns that just show up over and over and over again. So this one in particular, I'll teach it to you now. That one is down, down, up, down, up, down, down. Down, down, up, down, up, down, down. Down, down, up, down, up, down, down. Now, whenever I'm up strumming, I'm not trying to hit all 6 strings whenever I'm doing an up strum. You'll notice that when I do the down, down, up, the up part is generally just hitting the high E and the B string, possibly even the G string as well, but they're really just transitionary. They're meant to be like in between the beats. Those down strums, conversely, you want to try and emphasize the lower notes. The more emphasized they are, right on the beat. There's one thing in school that I really couldn't stand, and it was all these finger exercises. So if you have a guitar pick, you've seen these before. Maybe start on the low E string first fret, and you're going back and forth between the first and the second frets. And then back down. Now, even though this can seem like a big waste of time, it's really important that you practice the fundamentals. These fundamentals will last you the rest of your life. So if you find that even just spending like 1 month really focusing on a couple of different exercises, you'd be amazed at how that sets you up for the rest of your life. You won't find yourself struggling so much to play bar chords when you've been practicing this technique over and over again that's strengthening your entire hand. Your pinky that felt like it was just a wasted appendage on your hand, all of a sudden your pinky gets stronger and you find yourself reaching for frets that you haven't reached for before, all because you did those monotonous exercises. Now, a quick way to work on your muting is by using octaves. So octaves, I basically want to start with the 3rd fret of my A string, my pointer finger, and then I'm going to take my ring finger, and it's going to be on the 5th fret of the G string. Now, whenever you're fretting these 2 notes, it's very important that you mute the strings that aren't being played. So if I wasn't muting anything, it wouldn't sound too great. It sounds very dissonant. It could work for certain songs, but again, the 3rd fret of the A string and then the 5th fret of the G string, I want to be able to use my pointer finger almost like I'm barring this fret right here, but instead of barring it, instead of pressing down completely, I'm just resting my flesh that's on these other strings. I'm just resting it just enough that we have the string muted. So you can pluck each string and make sure you've got it nice and as muted as it can possibly be. But then the main strings that you're pressing down, that A string and that G string, you want those sounding out nice and full. And then the first finger, your pointer finger, is going to be pushing on the low E string just enough to give it a mute. It's a really great way to work on your muting, and then also as you're working with the octaves, you're kind of familiarizing yourself with the major scale. My next recommendation is that you familiarize yourself and get really comfortable with like 1 key at a time. So the G family of chords typically is going to be where you're going to start out on the guitar. We all know G major. Then you've probably learned this version of a C chord, an E minor, and a D, or a D like this. Familiarize yourself with all 4 of those chords to where you can not only switch in between chords, you can switch between them quickly with a smooth transition, but also as you get into picking. If you familiarize yourself and become comfortable with 1 key, it will translate to the other keys. For instance, as you're working on your finger picking, that same picking pattern that I'm using for the key of G, it'll work in the key of E. So it doesn't really matter. Like, pick one key that has 4 chords at least, like G, C, E minor, and D. Become very comfortable with those chords, and then you'll notice that your picking hand or your strumming hand, whatever you're doing with this hand, it will translate to the majority of the other keys out there, especially if you're using bar chords. My next tip is that you take your chords and slide them up and down the neck. The first instance of this is going to be like your root position C chord. Slide it up 2 frets and you get this D chord. 2 more frets, you get like an E minor. If you lift up your middle finger there. And then your G chord is up here like on the 10th fret. Same thing can be true of the D major chord. If you take D major, slide it up 2 frets, make it minor. Slide it up 2 more frets, that's F sharp minor. 1 more fret, that is your G major chord. 2 more frets, that's A. 2 more frets, that is B minor. So you get the point. If you take any of these chords, if you take the E major chord, and you got your bar chords figured out, you can go up to F sharp minor, G sharp minor, A, B. But all that is going to come through mainly experimenting. So as you're learning chord shapes down here, if you're playing the F chord, slide it up 2 frets, make it a G. Just realize you don't need to be confined down at the bottom, slide it up and down the neck, and you'll be discovering sounds that you never thought were possible. Now, if you've been watching the video and you're really interested in learning how to finger pick on the guitar, I've got this video specifically about using what I call the claw technique. I'd love for you to check out here on the channel. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons for more videos just like this, and I'll see you next time. All right, bye.